ॐ परतत्त्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. On the last Wednesday we missed our class due to problem with the Google itself. So we resume today and we are reading the third chapter. And what is the name of the third chapter? The Secret of Work. Now let us remember that on the first 2 days I had read or told about the perspective, and in that there was a point that what is the definition of Karma Yoga. And from this book itself I had read that definition of Karma Yoga is, what is Karma Yoga? The knowledge of the secret of work. Knowledge of the secret of work. And that is the name of this chapter, Secret of Work. So from this we can understand that the first 2 chapters as if were preliminary. In the first chapter we are told that we are concerned only with the effect on character, not on the outside results. And in the second, that we need not change our work. No work is better or worse, but we have to change the attitude in work. And in this third chapter, the first 2 paragraphs told us about which work is more important than the other, more higher than the other. But from this third para now, we read 3 paras that day, but we are going to read the third paragraph again, because the name of the chapter is Secret of Work. That means now we are entering Swamiji's Karma Yoga in a way. First 2 chapters can be taken as preliminary. And now, because the heading of the chapter is Secret of Work, which is Swamiji's definition of Karma Yoga, the knowledge of the secret of work, so that is now we are entering into deeper waters from today. We read again the third paragraph. We read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must all work incessantly. From the first paragraph, what we understand, that the Swamiji's Karma Yoga is based upon Bhagavad Gita. This is Swamiji's declaration almost on that. Because Swamiji is referring to Bhagavad Gita in defining Karma Yoga. So Swamiji's Karma Yoga is based completely on Gita. We read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must all work incessantly. In this we have seen what Swamiji has said and what Gita says in the third chapter. A limitation of karma is drawn there, that those yastu atmaratireva syad atmatriptasya manava atmani eva cha santushta tasya karyam na vidyate. And Swamiji's Karma Yoga also we read that one who is absolutely pure, one who is absolutely immersed in his Atman, for him there is no work. And so long as there is some slight impurity left in us, we work. So now, on that background we have to understand that Gita asks us to work incessantly. Gita itself tells us that at this point that limit goes away. Now, important point, all work is by nature composed of good and evil. By nature, the very work that we do is composed of good and evil. We cannot do any work which will not do some good somewhere. There cannot be any work which will not cause some harm somewhere. Let us take an example which Swamiji himself has given in other place. He will say that I am talking to you. You will say, what is harm in this? Is it not perfectly good work? Swamiji says, apparently, but microbes of the air are dying by my talking. Is that good? Killing others? Though unconsciously, but killing others. So, This is the best example to understand best from the highest point of view, that there is no work which is purely good. And the other side, Swamiji is telling that somebody's house is burned, but then it becomes replaced and so many things happen. The air becomes purified and what not. So even the worst appearing work does produce good somewhere, and the best work does produce some bad somewhere. Every work must necessarily be a mixture of good and evil. Yet we are commanded to work necessarily, incessantly. Good and evil will both have their results, will produce their karma. Karma means karma phal here. In the very first chapter, Swamiji had told, karma also means the karma phal. So good and bad both will have effect on our mind, on our life. Good action will entail upon us good effect, bad actions bad. But good and bad are both bondages of the soul. This is another important point. Good work does not become karma yoga by itself. Good work also is a bondage to the soul. Because if you do good work, you are compelled, you will have to go to heaven. And heaven cannot be permanent. After the result of that good work is over, you will have to come back, here or even downwards. So, good work, people will call you are a good man. That also is difficult these days. But good work is not the solution. You have to go beyond. I am the doer. The whole purpose of work is to transcend work. Sri Ramakrishna's disciple, Mahapurush Shivananda used to say, work to transcend work. The very purpose of Karma Yoga is that we have to go beyond the very idea that I am a worker. So, good work, but good and bad are both bondages of the soul. The solution reached in the Gita in regard to this bondage producing nature of work is that if we do not attach ourselves to the work we do, it will not have any binding effect on our soul. Here one new point is coming. Attachment, ordinarily as we know, I and mine, it is about our relations, our friends. Fundamentally speaking, about I, about mine is attachment. But that attachment is not meant here, understand? We become attached to the work we do. We have to be very clear in the mind. Work we are doing to go beyond work, a point should not come in our life where we are attached to that work itself and we are not ready to give it up. We give up a work in two different cases. One is change of work. And second is going beyond work. If we are asked to do something which we are not doing today, we resist. That is attachment to work. And if we perpetuate our working consciousness, then that is attachment. So you have to remember, Swamiji's Karma Yoga is telling that if we do not attach ourselves to the work we do, that is also two things there. We are attached to the work we are doing and we are attached to the product of that work. Somebody has built a temple. Ask him to leave that temple, go elsewhere. He will say, no, I have constructed this temple, I want to do here. So attachment to the work and you may say the results of work, this must be given up. Especially, as I am telling, mostly concerned with my own brothers in the Ramakrishna Mission. That work we are doing, but we must know that we are trying to go beyond work. We should not try to perpetuate our work consciousness. Then it will not have any binding effect on our soul. We shall try to understand what is meant by this non-attachment to work. So non-attachment to work has to be understood. This is exactly definition. Definition was knowledge of the secret of work, and this what Swamiji is telling here, to understand what is meant by this non-attachment to work. Now, this is the one central idea in the Gita. Work incessantly, but be not attached to it. Now Swamiji is trying to explain. Sanskara can be translated very nearly by inherent tendency. In the first chapter I read, when we do some work, it produces some outside result, but it produces an impression on our mind. And that creates a tendency of the mind to do a particular thing or behave in a particular way. And the sum total of the tendencies becomes our character. So, sanskara can be translated very nearly by inherent tendency. Very nearly in the sense, no word of Sanskrit can ever be correctly translated in English. The concepts themselves are different. And so very nearly to understand that, this is the translation. Using the simile of a lake for the mind, how the simile of lake is used for the mind, you understand? Mind is composed of very subtle matter. In the world we see, compared to solid, liquids are more mobile. Now, more than liquids, air is mobile. More than any gross element, the subtle elements are mobile. And that is why the simile of a lake becomes very useful. Wave in the lake, all that becomes useful because our mind consists of subtle matter. Using the simile of a lake for the mind, every ripple, every wave that rises in the mind, what is the ripple? Small wave, big wave. Small wave and big wave that rises in the mind, when it subsides, we see it has subsided, does not die out entirely, but leaves a mark and a future possibility of that wave coming out again. That is how the memory comes. If what we thought or what we did is lost completely, that moment, then how the memory comes? That wave has gone deeper into our subconscious and almost like a seed it is lying there. But that has made a tendency that in a calmer mind that will come up again and affect us. That is the bondage. Does not die out entirely, but leaves a mark and a future possibility of that wave coming out again. This mark with the possibility of the wave reappearing is what is called sanskara. This is the sanskara. That impression which has a tendency to come up again and make us behave in that pattern. Every work that we do, every movement of the body, every thought that we think leaves such an impression on the mind stuff. This also in the first chapter Swamiji has told, work means whether doing by body or speech or mind, anything. So even with think a thought, the impression is created. On the mind stuff, and even when such impressions are not obvious on the surface, we do not see it on the surface. They are sufficiently strong to work beneath the surface subconsciously. Beneath the surface, that is, tendency is there. What we are every moment is determined by the sum total of these impressions on the mind. That is the character. Sum total of all the impressions. What I am just at this moment is the effect of the sum total of all the impressions of my past life. Past life is also, you may say. This is really what is made by character. Each man's character is determined by the sum total of these impressions. So no two people are same. Impressions are different, and that is how people differ. Same situation, two people react in very different ways, opposite ways sometimes, because the impressions are different. If good impressions prevail, the character becomes good. Already Swami just told, nothing is perfectly good, but comparatively, if bad, it becomes bad. If a man continuously hears bad words, thinks bad thoughts, does bad actions, his mind will be full of bad impressions. And they will influence his thought and work without his being conscious of the fact. Why a man behaves in such a way? Why a man thinks in such a way? Impressions are there. He is not aware of the impressions, but he is aware of what he is doing. Similarly, in fact, these bad impressions are always working, and their resultant must be evil, and that man will be a bad man, he cannot help it. The sum total of these impressions in him will create the strong motive power for doing bad actions. He will be like a machine in the hands of his impressions, and they will force him to do evil. Similarly, if a man thinks good thoughts and does good works, the sum total of these impressions will be good, and they, in a similar manner, will force him to do good even in spite of himself. That means he is not willing, but the impressions are there, so they will make him. When a man has done so much good work and thought so many good thoughts, that there is an irresistible tendency in him to do good, primarily, in spite of himself. And even if he wishes to do evil, his mind, as the sum total of his tendencies, will not allow him to do so. That means on that moment, he thinks of doing something bad, but the past impressions of doing good is so strong that they will not allow him to do that. The tendencies will turn him back. He is completely under the influence of the good tendencies. When such is the case, a man's good character is said to be established. We are not yet talking of karma yoga. Good character is established, relatively purification. As the tortoise tucks its feet and head inside the shell, and you may kill it and break it in pieces, and yet it will not come out. Even so, the character of that man who has control over his motives and organs, control over his motives and organs is unchangeably established. So, control is one important point of Karma Yoga. He controls his own inner forces, and nothing can draw them out against his will. By this continuous reflex of good thoughts, good impressions moving over the surface of the mind, the tendency for doing good becomes strong. And as a result, we feel able to control the indriyas, the sense organs, the nerve centers. Thus alone will character be established, then alone a man gets to truth, purification of the mind, then alone gets, such a man is safe forever. He cannot do any evil. You may place him in any company, there will be no danger for him. There is. Now Swamiji is coming to spiritual life. Up till now, good and bad he has discussed. Nothing is fully good, nothing is fully bad, but relatively good things will produce good effect, bad things will produce bad effect on the tendency or the character of a man. From this point now, Swamiji is rising higher. There is a still higher state than having this good tendency. So in the world, people define good and bad, and that is the end of their life. All the Vedic karma kanda or any good action we are doing will make our character good. That's all. It will not release us from the bondage of work. So there is a still higher state than having this good tendency, and that is the desire for liberation. It starts from the desire. We desire enjoyment. We desire to do good work. We desire to get rid of this tendency for enjoying, tendency for doing good work and be free. So herein starts the awakening of man and the Karma Yoga takes place. Desire for liberation. Swamiji has defined the goal of life as knowledge, the goal of life as freedom. This very freedom is called liberation. So the desire to become free is the starting point of spiritual life. Not just to become good people. You must remember that freedom of the soul is the goal of all yoga. So he has given here itself. All yogas. And each one equally leads to the same result. We have seen that this independence is not true. Every yoga is blending into the other yoga, Swamiji has told. But predominantly we can call by this name. By work alone, men may get to where Buddha got largely by meditation or Christ by prayer. We have to understand the limitations of this. Swamiji has just now shown that no work is fully good. And also that this Karma Yoga necessarily brings in Jnana, Bhakti and Yoga. Relatively speaking, this is true. Buddha got largely by meditation, not that he did not work. Or Christ by prayer, not that he did not work. So these are the main sadhanas in their life, and we'll taking up karma as the main sadhana. Buddha was a working jnani. I say work has come. Buddha was a working jnani. Christ was a bhakta, working bhakta. But the same goal was reached by both of them. The difficulty is here. What is the difficulty? Liberation means entire freedom. Freedom from the bondage of good as well as from the bondage of evil. We don't want to be bound. No sanskaras remain in us. If we realize our real nature, if this I is destroyed, no sanskaras remain. Sanskaras all assemble, you may say, gather themselves around this I, the doer. So, difficulty is here. That means, why it is difficult? Good works we may become habit. But the difficulty is that we don't want to be bound by that work. Liberation means entire freedom. Freedom from the bondage of good as well as from the bondage of evil. A golden chain is as much a chain as an iron one. There is a thorn in my finger, and I use another to take the first one out, and when I have taken it out, I throw both of these aside. That means bad tendencies are there. I go on doing good work deliberately, then that tendency to do bad will be conquered, but then the tendency to be bound by good actions also has to be given up. I have no necessity for keeping the second thorn, because both are thorns after all. So the bad tendencies are to be counteracted by the good ones, and the bad impressions on the mind should be removed by the fresh waves of good ones until all that is evil almost disappears. Completely it will disappear only when I is lost, or is subdued and held in control in a corner of the mind. This we can do by good works, that the evil will be there, but held in a corner of the mind, subdued. But after that, the good tendencies have also to be conquered. Thus the attached becomes the unattached. How? That is no Swamiji has not yet told. But by the desire for liberation, a different type of force will come, and good tendencies, when good tendencies are conquered, then the non-attachment comes. This must Swamiji tell. Work, but let not the action or the thought produce a deep impression on the mind. So the question is depth of the impression. Let the ripples come and go. Let huge actions proceed from the muscles and the brain, but let them not make any deep impression on the mind. How can this be done? So this is the end result Swamiji has told first, not the process of non-attachment. So now he is telling how can this be done. Knowledge of the secret of work. We say that the impression of any action to which we attach ourselves remains. Now he is showing the attachment in our life and how it makes the impression deeper. I may meet hundreds of persons during the day, and among them meet also one whom I love. Love in the form of attachment. And when I retire at night, I may try to think of all the faces I saw, but only that face comes before the mind, the face which I met perhaps only for 1 minute, and which I loved. All the others have vanished. My attachment, my attachment to this particular person caused a deeper impression on my mind than all the other faces. Physiologically, the impressions have all been the same. So physiology cannot explain this at all. Every one of the faces that I saw pictured itself on the retina, and the brain took the pictures in, and yet there was no similarity of effect upon the mind, effect upon the character. Most of the faces perhaps were entirely new faces, about which I had never thought before, but that one face of which I got only a glimpse found associations inside. The previous sanskara. Perhaps I had pictured him in my mind for years, knew hundreds of things about him, and this one new vision of him awakened hundreds of sleeping memories in my mind. And this one impression, having been repeated perhaps 100 times more than those of the different faces altogether, will produce a great effect on the mind. That means you have seen a person. You have seen a person first time, not much impression. We see another man. We have seen him hundreds of times before. Our attachment is there. Then this seeing wakes up all those impressions. And so the impression becomes stronger. Therefore, be unattached. So necessity of unattachment he has shown now. If attachment is there, the impression becomes deeper. If somebody is attached to his teacher spiritual, somebody is attached to God, then that impression becomes deeper. Therefore, be unattached. Let things work, let brain centers work incessantly, but let not a ripple conquer the mind. And he has told in other place, here also it will come, that to achieve this non-attachment is a life's work. Work as if you were a stranger in this land. Who is a stranger in this land? Who has no mind, who has no mind, no attachment. He is a stranger in the land. A sojourner, work incessantly, but do not bind yourselves. Bondage is terrible. Now he is warning us, bondage is terrible. Even the golden chain is terrible. The bondage is terrible. It will not allow us to become free, but we have to become free. This world is not our habitation. When Swamiji came to Sri Ramakrishna on the first day, and Sri Ramakrishna asked him to sing a song, and he sang this song, Chalo mana nije niketane. Oh mind, let us go to our own abode. This is not our house. Sansar videshe videshir veshe brahmakeno akarane. This sansar is a foreign land and you have put in a foreign dress and you have forgotten. This world is not our habitation. It is only one of the many stages through which we are passing. Sometimes they become God, sometimes demon, sometimes this and that. So one of the stages. Remember that great saying of the Sankhya, the whole of nature is for the soul, not the soul for nature. Within ourselves, I is called soul here by the Sankhya. And the Prakriti means our body, mind and all that. The very reason of nature's existence is for the education of the soul. We are using this body, mind, etc. and understanding every moment that we have to become free, we have to become free. It has no other meaning. It is there because the soul must have knowledge and through knowledge free itself. This we saw. Freedom comes through knowledge. That I am not an individual. My real nature is different. That is the knowledge and that we have to come. If you remember this always, Karma Yoga, secret of work, we must remember this always, that through knowledge we are going to free ourselves. The soul must have knowledge and through knowledge free itself. If you remember this always, we shall never be attached to nature. We shall know that nature is a book in which we are to read. If we know that we are not this what apparent I, the doer, and we want to be free, we are just like a traveler, then we will not be attached one way. Knowledge. So here non-attachment is coming through knowledge, not only by work. We shall know that nature is a book in which we are to read, and that when we have gained the required knowledge, the book is of no more value to us. Work is like a book, and experience is like the reading of the book. Instead of that, however, we are identifying ourselves with nature. Instead of that, this in the Gita, 13th chapter, Purusha Prakrito Saihi Bhungte Prakritiyan Gunan. Purusha becomes identified with Prakriti and enjoys and suffers the gunas produced by Prakriti. That is what Swamiji is telling here. Instead of that, however, we are identifying ourselves with nature. We are thinking that the soul is for nature, that the spirit is for the flesh, spirit is for the flesh. Understand this? This I consciousness or the consciousness is only for me to enjoy. That is meaning spirit is for the flesh. And as a common saying has it, we think that man lives to eat and not eats to live. Common saying, but important saying, why you are living? I want to eat. Real solution is, why you are eating? Because I want to live and do sadhana and get God. That is why I am eating. We forget this. And we live, what will be night's dinner? What will be tomorrow's lunch? So we are living to eat those things. We are continually making this mistake. We are regarding nature as ourselves and are becoming attached to it. Nature here means not only outside nature, our body, our mind, our speech, that is nature. And we think we are nature and we are attached to it. And as soon as this attachment comes, there is the deep impression on the soul which binds us down and makes us work not from freedom but like slaves. Slaves to our nature, not slaves to some people. This is a sentence of Swamiji which people will rightly misinterpret or misunderstand. The next sentence, very important. The whole gist of this teaching is that you should work like a master and not as a slave. Master of whom? Master of not some people, not that you have to become the head of the factory. Master of yourself, that is what Swamiji is meaning. Slave to the senses, slave to our own mind, slave to our own attachments. Master means the opposite. I am totally in control of that. That is called the master. This sentence of Swamiji is oft quoted and mistaken. Work like a master and not like a slave. Slave to your senses, to our mind. Work like a master of yourself. Work incessantly, but do not do slave's work. Do you not see how everybody works? Nobody can be altogether at rest. Now showing that those who have body consciousness must work. 99% of mankind work like slaves. Why you are working? Indriyas want this. Why you are working? Family wants this. So slaves of our own body and mind tendency, and that makes us slave to people around us. And the result is misery. What is misery? It is all selfish work. Selfish work is making this bondage and this misery. Work through freedom, work through love. Now love does not mean attachment. Swamiji will explain what is meant by love here. And that should be the motive, that should be the guiding force behind every work. That gives freedom. This freedom works both ways. Swamiji will explain nicely. If we love a person, we give him 10% freedom. If we think he or she should do as I want he or she to do, we are binding ourselves more than the person. Work through freedom, work through love. Now this entering into Karma Yoga, secret of work. The word love is very difficult to understand. Love never comes until there is freedom, straight away. There is no true love possible in the slave to senses. If you buy a slave and tie him down in chains and make him work for you, he will work like a drudge, but there will be no love in him. So when we ourselves work for the things of the world as slave, that is it, slave to the things of the world, there can be no love in us, and our work is not true work. So long as we have desires for the things of the world, we are slaves, don't have any love, and we cannot work properly. This is true of work done for relatives and friends. I am doing work for family, I am doing work for my friend, because you are bound. And it's true of work done for our own selves. Selfish work is slave's work. Now this is the definition. Work like a master, not like a slave. Swamiji defines it, selfish work is slave's work. And here is a test. Now Swamiji is testing love. Very important test. Every act of love brings happiness. There is no act of love which does not bring peace and blessedness as its result, reaction. Two people, they say they love each other, and because they do not give freedom enough, something one person does, other feels sorry. It is not love at all. Now Swamiji jumps into the absolute knowledge here, because this love, what is love you know? Name of God. In the Upanishads, God is called as Satchit Ananda. And when people experience that, they call it isness, shining and love. The Ananda itself in experience is called love. the absolute Ananda. Swamiji is telling that now. Real existence, real knowledge and real love are eternally connected with one another, the three in one. Where one of them is, the other also must be. Think of this. I exist means I know that I exist. And as soon as I know I exist, their joy comes in me. But this is unlimited. When I know I am Brahman, then I am conscious of Brahman and I am full with bliss. That is what comes. And this Swamiji calls as love, not attachment. And we have to work through this love. The others also must be there. They are the three aspects of the one without a second. One without a second is the nature of the reality. And from that we are deriving Swamiji's Karma Yoga, not from work only. The existence, knowledge, bliss. When that existence becomes relative, we see it as the world. That knowledge becomes in its turn modified into the knowledge of the things of the world. Real knowledge is one without a second. Now when in the world of Maya, it becomes subject knowing the object. And that bliss forms the foundation of all true love known to the heart of man. That bliss of Brahman, now, even beyond Gita, this is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya is teaching his own wife Maitri that the husband does not love for the sake of the wife, he loves because the Atman is in both of them. Vice versa. So, foundation of all true love known to the heart of man is bliss which is Brahman, bliss which is one without a second. I will give you an example to you to understand this in personal life. There were two young people, bosom friends, and both were supported by our living with Holy Mother Sarda Devi. Now this bosom friendship is emotional. So something happened between them. Then the one became angry on the other. And out of that mood of vengeance, he went to Holy Mother. I am not talking from any book, please mind you. You will not search it in the book. I learnt all this from my Guruji. So, this man goes to the Holy Mother and says, Mother, don't keep that boy with you. Mother immediately says, why you are insulting me? He said, Mother, I am not telling anything to you, but you do not know how much bad that boy is, so I am telling that. She says, suppose he is bad. How did you come to know that he is bad? Because he loved you. And do you know, I am the love which exists between any two persons in the world, Mother is telling. Mother is telling, I am the love which exists between any two people in this world. So that is what Swamiji is telling here. In a personal sense, Mother is telling. In the impersonal sense, it is Brahman which is the love between the two people. That is what Yajnavalkya was telling Maitri. And that bliss forms the foundation of all true love known to the heart of man. Therefore, true love can never react so as to cause pain, either to the lover or to the beloved. Because that depends upon Brahman which is eternal, and full freedom is also in there, and so no reaction of pain comes by any action of the people. Now Swamiji is giving the example. Suppose a man loves a woman. He wishes to have her all to himself and feels extremely jealous about her every moment. He wants her to sit near him, to stand near him, and to eat and move at his bidding. He is a slave to her. Instead of making her slave, what is happening is that he is a slave to her and wishes to have her as a slave, both sides. That is not love. It is a kind of morbid affection of the slave. Morbid means sick, not normal. Morbid affection of the slave, insinuating itself as love, appearing as if you are loving. It cannot be love, because it is painful. If she does not do what he wants, it brings him pain. With love there is no painful reaction. Love only brings a reaction of bliss. If it does not, it is not love. Test of love, Swamiji told, no, he has given this test. It is mistaking something else for love. All worldly love comes in this category. There is no love in the world, ordinarily. Attachment. When you have succeeded in loving your husband, your wife, your children, the whole world, the universe, in such a manner that there is no reaction of pain or jealousy, no selfish feeling, then you are in a fit state to be unattached. The very difficult thing Swamiji has brought. First he showed non-attachment by knowledge, and now he is telling non-attachment by bhakti or love. Love means freedom, and that will, so it's a very, very big science. Karma Yoga is not only meant by doing work. Very big science, and that is what Swamiji told. Karma Yoga means the knowledge of secret of work, and in this chapter on secret of work, Swamiji is telling us this. Then you are in a fit state to be unattached. Example, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, look at me, Arjuna. If I stop from work for one moment, the whole universe will die. I have nothing to gain from work. I am the one Lord. But why do I work? Because I love the world. न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यम त्रिषु लोकेषु किंचन. I do not have any duty or bound to do anything in these all three worlds. But I do. God is unattached because He loves. The real love makes us unattached, both sides. From love comes non-attachment, and because when he is non-attached, he can love properly. Wherever there is attachment, the clinging to the things of this world, you must know that it is all physical attraction between sets of particles of matter. My Guruji used to use the word ordinary love between lovers or husband and wife and all that, friends, molecular attraction. As the hydrogen ion is attracted to chlorine ion, like that molecular attraction. You must know that it is all physical attraction, and these days the word has become so common, you remember. Chemistry between X and Y. Yes, this is chemistry, physical attraction. Between sets of particles of matter. Something that attracts two bodies nearer and nearer all the time. And if they cannot get near enough, produces pain. But where there is real love, it does not rest on physical attachment at all. Such lovers may be 1,000 miles away from one another, but their love will be all the same. It does not die and will never produce any painful reaction. Now comes that sentence which we are waiting for. To attain this non-attachment is almost a life work. Why use the word almost? Because we may come to this within our life, then we are free. So, but almost for life we are struggling. So here I am reminded by, I told you on the first day, that Karma Yoga means work without attachment. And this attachment comes through life struggle. It is only too easy to say I am unattached. Attachment sometimes shifts here and there. I will tell some funny stories. One person says, I am not attached to money at all. Whatever I earn, I come and give it to my wife. She knows. So he is not attached to money, he is attached to wife. Other persons are there. I am not attached to my wife or children. I use my money as I like. So you are attached to money. So shifting attachments. But where there is real love, it does not rest on physical attachment at all. Such lovers may be 1,000 miles away from one another, but their love will be all the same. It does not die and will never produce any painful reaction. To attain this non-attachment is almost a life work. Now, we can struggle for this by thinking of the result. But as soon as we have reached this point, we have attained the goal of love and become free. The bondage of nature falls from us, and we see nature as she is. She forges no more chains for us. We stand entirely free and take not the results of work into consideration. Who then cares for what the results may be? One day I quoted what Shakranji told me, and it has become like so much that somebody has extracted those points and is spreading that small portion of the video. We must remember 4 things like that. Somebody sent it to me. Now, to make us understand and feel, he is giving our own example. Do you ask anything from your children in return for what you have given them? Some people do ask. Because I have done this for you, you have to do for me. Sometimes in a parents' meeting, I am asked what we should expect from our children. What was my reply? Basing upon Shakranji, nothing, zero. If you expect, you will meet with frustration. If you do not expect, you get everything. We did so much for him. Who told you to do? You did all your work because you could not keep quiet. That ends there. It is your duty to work for them, and there the matter ends. While doing, you say it is our duty. And then why you expect results? In whatever you do for a particular person, apply the same everywhere. A city or a state, assume the same attitude towards it as you have towards your children. Expect nothing in return. If you can invariably take the position of a giver, in which everything given by you is a free offering to the world without any thought of return, then will your work bring you no attachment. Attachment comes only when we expect a return. Almost it is identical. If attachment is there, expectations come. If working like slaves results in selfishness and attachment, working as masters of our own mind, now we have defined that mastery. Working as masters of our own mind gives rise to the bliss of non-attachment. This highest joy in non-attachment. We often talk of rights and justice. We used to take this para on the next occasion. Here I make a small announcement. Most of you have understood that already, that my class on Atmabodh from the university has ended, and from tomorrow I am to take a text called Vakya Vritti, Shankaracharya's, in the class from the Vivekananda University. And in Karma Yoga, we stop here today. 1 or 2 paragraphs are left in this chapter, and then Swamiji will take us deeper and deeper into it. So, we stop here today. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapanarato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
प्रणाम महाराज।